right. Well, welcome back, everybody. So, by popular demand and request, I have started up the solo episodes again. I think somewhere last year I had decided to drop the book and solo episodes, but it seems like people really enjoy those as well as the guest episodes. So, and I think there is a lot of benefit to me speaking, so you get a chance to hear me more and not just my guests, right? So we're going to bring this back, and for today we're going to talk about why people stay stuck and how to break free from it with 5 main points that I have. But really, it stems from the times in my life where I made a big transition, or I'm trying to take on too much, and I reach this point of just being stuck or going down a negative spiral loop. And I think many people I've spoken to in the past can relate, and I'm sure many of you can too, right? So, for example, when I left medicine after undergrad, I had to, study and taken the MCATs, and I'd done all this, and I was ready to go to med school, and I decided to change paths. I didn't have a plan B. I didn't know what I was going to do. And ultimately, I was like lost. I was stuck. I knew I wanted to do business. I knew I had just started this podcast and I wanted to do that, but it was a very lost time. And I think some of these points might actually help you if you're feeling this way as well. Um, so if you ever had this feeling of no matter how much you learn or how much you plan, or how much you even desire something, but you're still not moving forward, I think this episode might be for you, right? So let's jump right in. 5 biggest reasons why people stay stuck and how to get out of it. One, I would say, is overthinking and analysis paralysis, right? So many of us, and I know many people like this, will often go into this sector of perfectionism. They feel as though it has to be perfect. They have to get it right. I have this one friend, very talented artist and musician, and he's super picky with how everything sounds and how it should be perfect. And I remember one time he was showing me some samples, and I told him, man, as being an average layman in this field, I can't tell you the difference, and I don't think it matters, right? So sometimes what's interesting is what we think matters, ultimately the market doesn't or can't distinguish, right? That's why some businesses focus on the wrong things and don't grow, I believe is the same philosophy here, is they're just focusing on the wrong things. Um, my best advice to him was just keep producing. That's the best way, right? Just the more iterations you do, the better you become. And I think the best example in this is when I started my podcast, it was far from good. I mean, I wasn't even in frame when I remember my first recording. I had a $30 microphone I used for a couple of years, and it was all about learning, really learning how to speak, use less filler words, stop saying when a guest talks. That's a big one. And things like that, right? So you learn along the way. And that only stemmed from the fact that I was willing to be okay with sucking. Like, just people made fun of me. It happened. It's to be expected. You're doing something that others won't. I think if you remind yourself that takes courage and think about it in a different frame like that, you're doing what most people wouldn't and can't, because it's so much easier to be a keyboard warrior and sit behind the comforts of their screen and just type away whatever nonsense they want. But to actually put yourself out there, when I see someone do that, I have a lot of admiration for it, because I know how difficult it is now. That quote, nobody doing better than you hates, or what is it? Nobody hates on a loser, right? Like, they're only hating on you because you're trying to do something out the norm that they can't do. It's really just projection of fear, which kind of stems into my number 2, is fear of failure or judgment is a big stopper for many people. And I think mainly it is either somebody else's voice in your head that's constantly on loop, or a voice that you developed. I love this concept that your brain is a receiver, right? I think the best example of this is we've all had those messed up thoughts from time to time, something just completely out of our character, but the thought still comes up, right? Like, like you see some, like, I don't know, elderly person, you're like, I could take them, I could take everybody out here right now, or some crazy thought that just arises. I mean, think about movie plots, right? Some movie plots have some very crazy events that happen. That's still human imagination. it's an idea transmitted right through the ether of whatever you want to call it, unified consciousness or whatever. It is our job to fine tune, refine, and filter what thoughts come and what actions we take from thoughts, right? Someone who acts on impulsive thoughts or scary or weird or bad thoughts is generally a reflection of their current character, right? So I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully I'm not the only one and I just like said something weird. But I really do think we can all relate to some crazy idea we had, or I could crash this car right now if I just swerved a little bit, or here's one I think people can relate to because I've had it is you're standing on a really high building or ceiling or something, right? And you look down and it's a really long drop, and that idea of jumping comes, um, right? But we're not going to jump, right? Hopefully, but yeah, I hopefully that takes home the point is we have these thoughts. It's whether you act on them, right? So to get back to it, sometimes these thoughts aren't even our own. Oftentimes they're not even our own. Oftentimes our beliefs aren't even our own, right? We were just programmed or ingrained in it as children who are trying to make sense of the world. And I think the best thing you can do is question everything you've learned, everything you know, especially what you truly believe. But fear of judgment is to be expected. I mean, this idea when Alex Hermosi says, this is what hard feels like, you're resetting the parameter of what it takes to get what you want. And you have to understand it's part of the progress, right? I'm guilty of it too, even though it was 4+ years ago I started the podcast and I was doing this, and now that fear isn't as prominent when I post episodes and stuff. When I first, or now that I'm starting this whole business sector, the whole thing is a restart. The fear of judgment, fear of failure. So I have to go through it all over again and lead by example. So I'm not perfect, but it's stuff that I've learned and learned that what has helped me and what hasn't. And I think, living your life in the fear of others' opinions isn't going to serve you, because ultimately, when you are close to the end of your life, that's when the most powerful thoughts that you had been avoiding for most of it arises, right? The stuff that you regret, the stuff that you never tried, the stuff that your soul was begging you to explore and you just couldn't do it. So you took the safe job, you started numbing yourself through instant gratification pleasures, whichever it could be, food or Netflix or substances. And, I think that's really where this whole mental health epidemic even stems from, is people aren't doing what they're called to do or don't feel like they can, right? But this, the next 2-3 points will help towards that if this is where you're at. But I think, ultimately reframing this idea of that's just part of the process. First, they laugh, then they get quiet, then they applaud and clap and cheer and want this and that from you. And I've noticed this progression. I've noticed people much, much more successful than me go through this progression. It's to be expected. That's just how it is. Nobody comes out the gate perfect or amazing in anything they do, which is why I really like watching things like Tony Robbins' first lectures and seminars when he was in his 20s. It's so inspiring, because when I went to his conference and saw him do his thing, I was like, oh man, like, how does one even replicate that? That's a one of a kind guy. Like, but then again, he's also in his 60s and he's been doing this for 40 years. He's been doing this twice as long as I've been alive, almost, right? So to put into perspective, he's got experience. So I can't really compare myself to someone like that, because I have zero perspective of what it's like to be 60 and doing something for 40 years. But guaranteed he experienced the same thing when he first started, right? So before we jump right back into the episode real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to my friends over at Magic Mind. They actually sent me this awesome kit. So this is actually a completely different recording, obviously, as you can tell, but it's because I completely messed up the first unboxing I've done. So live and learn, but I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about Magic Mind. They have neurotropics like lion's mane, and they also have ashwagandha, which is great for stress. And the main thing about their flagship product, which is they have two. They have sleep, and I believe this one's called Focus. But yeah, so they have two. This one is meant to lower your stress, increase calmness, and also just focus and energy without the caffeine jitters. And it's really just like a health drink shot. So we're just going to do one. Also, they did give me the sleep, which is awesome. I haven't tried it yet, but I will try it tonight. So I'll let you guys know how it is on the further episodes. But yeah, so let's try it. Cheers. It smells like very citrusy. It's 12 ingredients. So real quick before I drink this, I take this sponsorship stuff very seriously. I don't want to endorse things that I don't believe in. So it really is important to me if a company reaches out that I truly do believe they have a great product, because too much of this world is run by, money and just the greed for wealth. And I understand as a creator that you don't really get paid for your efforts, and it's a very delayed gratification process to actually make some money doing this type of stuff. But can't sell my reputation for just some quick bucks. So I really do like their product, and let's give this a shot. No pun intended. It's got a very citrusy orange punch to it at the beginning, and a kind of interesting aftertaste. It definitely is a health drink. It's not going to be like a soda or a smoothie, but I think it's awesome. The taste is great for what it gives you, and yeah, it seems like a very great deal. So if you guys are interested in trying it yourself, they actually gave me a really cool coupon discount code. You can actually get the Focus and Sleep for 45% off their bundle if you use the link www. If you use the link www.magicmind.com/learnjan in all caps, LEARN, learn, JAN, Jan. And that is my, link they gave me, so you guys can try it for half off pretty much. So if you guys try it, let me know what you think. This is really cool, and I appreciate my friends over at Magic Mind for doing another partnership and giving me this opportunity. So thanks, guys, and let's jump right back into the episode. Anyways, point 3, big one is lack of identity. I think this is huge, especially for health goals, right? So when you're wanting to start working out or start adding health goals to your life, whether it's journaling, meditation, stretching, nutrition, whatever it is, we tend to put way too much on our plate and then we drop it. And I've seen so many people have health goals, never even start, have health goals, drop it, have health goals, hit it, and then go back to normal, right? There's their starting point, like they go full circle. And I think that all stems from this idea that they just don't have the identity built, right? And if we go back to fear of judgment, failure, I think this all kind of dances around the idea of confidence as well. So when we're talking about this idea of lack of identity, what you're doing is building this self trust and self confidence in yourself that you can do what you say you're going to do, right? So because ultimately, who do you spend the most time with is yourself. So your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses. So when you tell yourself, oh, today I'm going to meditate for an hour, journal for 30 minutes, I'm going to do all this stuff, and you don't even do it for a minute any day, you're not going to do it. You might for a day, a week, few weeks, and depending on the literature, 21 to 60 days is how long it takes to build a habit. And I'm assuming that that range is probably depending on how difficult the habit is, right? Brushing your teeth, 2 minutes, easy to build habit if you're not doing it, versus meditating for an hour, right? That's a much more difficult task, and priority you'd have to set to achieve it. So building that identity, I think, is the first step. So determining what that identity is, right? So I think a lot of people will set goals like, I need to read 24 books this year, which means I need to read 2 a month. I don't think that's the right goal. I think that's more of an identity and habit you would like to build, right? Would you rather read 24 books, or would you rather be a reader, right? Because what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing? Because when you say, I want to read 24 books, cool. You could do that in a day if you really wanted to. Just speed read through 24 books and you're done. But what did you get out of that, right? So I think the question you should be asking is, what are you optimizing for? And if you're optimizing for learning certain golden nuggets and applying it to your life, then the real goal here is to be the reader, not to be someone who reads 24 books. I think eventually a reader would read 24 books or 52 books or 100 books or whatever, right? You need to build that identity if you don't have it yet. So even starting as small as a page a day, a paragraph a day if it's a scripture or something, or something very dense, like an essay. Starting smaller, but just doing that every day, it's so underrated. I know it's so basic to say, but it truly is golden what it does for you, because first it tells your mind, right? When we go back to all this psychology and mindset stuff, it tells your mind, hey, I can do what I say I'm going to do. Right. So, for example, I learned this the hard way over many years. So, anytime I fall off the wagon with working out, I now know never to just jump back in and do an hour long weightlifting or calisthenics or whatever, or kickboxing, right? What I'll do is, especially like depending on how far I've fallen off, but let's say I stopped going to the gym, it's been a while and I need to get back, and my endurance, stamina, everything's down. Honestly, just going to the gym is and has been one of my goals in the past, right? So it's like my goal at the beginning was just start going. There was days where I didn't even want to work out, to be honest. So I was like, I don't want to go. But my goal was to just go to the gym. So I drove there, I got there, and the fact that I was already there made me work out for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. But then I went home. And to me, and I think it's all about frame of reference and how you frame things in your mind, right? Many people, what they might do and what I used to do in the past would beat myself up and be like, 10 minutes, dude, I used to exercise for an hour or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But now I tell myself, I hit my goal. That's a win. That's a win, right? Because I said I would go to the gym every day, and I went to the gym today. So reframing like that, I felt good. I felt really happy actually that I went for 10 minutes, because that day I didn't even want to go at all. So the fact that I put on my gym clothes, drove my car, got to the gym, did 10 minutes and drove home, I felt ecstatic about it, right? And then from there, 10 minutes became 20 minutes. 20 minutes became, hey, can I lift more? Hey, can I do this? Can I add that? Right. So it's a slow compound growth, but naturally, because everybody talks about, I want to find my passion. I don't know what my passion is. Passion, I think, arises when you start to get good at something. That's just how I've noticed it. Right. For example, whether it was doing debate or math counts or um, learning anthropology or studying medicine, whatever it was that I was doing, I noticed there was no passion at the beginning. Maybe there's a passion for the vision, right? Becoming a doctor was a passion because I could feel it, I could see it at the time, but there was no passion when I was doing things. But when I started to get good at something, that's when the passion kicked in, right? Because that's where you're like, oh, I'm getting good, right? So you start to feel it. You're feeling yourself. You're doing the work, whatever, right? So um, identity is huge. And I think if you can't even determine that, you have nothing to build upon, right? Let's say you have a big goal. I want to be a six-figure entrepreneur, right? Well, first you need the identity of what would a six-figure entrepreneur do from in their day-to-day, right? Ideally, like what is this higher version of yourself that you're looking to achieve, this identity that your soul desires that you want to achieve? Six-figure entrepreneur. Cool. What does that person do? Well, they probably don't scroll late into the night on social media. They're probably not wasting money. They're probably learning about money. They're probably learning how to do iterations of their product and make it better, right? Or they're learning leads and outreach and sales funnels and all these things, right? So you have to kind of take that step backwards. And I think it's easier to go from big to small and say, okay, this is the identity, this is the vision, these are the goals, these are the milestones, these are the checkpoints I need to hit on my day to day, week to week, month, year, right? So I think it all starts with identity, and identity kind of also formulates from, your why and things like that. I've had previous episodes about identity with guests and solo episodes, or you could find someone else on YouTube or whatever. Atomic Habits talks about it. So if you're looking for more, I would look into other resources if this is where you're at. But this is a big one. Number 4, chasing too many goals at once, I think is huge. Many of us, people that have large aspirations and ambitions, what they tend to do is they put too much on their plate. And I'm so guilty of this because I'll say yes to a bunch of things, or I'll add a bunch of things, or say I want to post 3 episodes a week, 7 shorts, a LinkedIn post every day. I want to start blogs. I want to do a newsletter. I want to do all these things. But it doesn't start that way, right? When we go all the way back to what we were talking about earlier about compound growth, the best way it's worked for me is small wins, right? So clear, single goal, small wins. I have 4 big goals for this year. The first one is working on my endurance and health. So You should, if you're interested or if you like what I do, you should follow me on Instagram in the description, because I'm going to be posting my journey on running. I hate running. I've always been a sprinter. I played sports. I can sprint. I love sprinting. I hate long distance running so much. So I've decided to set this as my health goal. I'm going to push myself and I'm going to run. So that's my priority number one, is getting good sleep, eating right, training, which is, running. And then I'll also lift when I can, right? So health is my number one goal for this first quarter. Next quarter, I think it'll be the business. And then the third quarter will be a podcast goal I want to hit. And then fourth is a personal goal of mine, which I may or may not share later down the road. So, but I will share eventually. So it's an exciting goal. And, but yeah, so instead of focusing all four goals right there on the get go of January 1st, I decided, okay, I'm going to just focus one goal at a time, one thing, single vision. So right now it's health, but obviously I have more time in the day than just only doing health stuff. So wherever I have that spaced time, I start to work on the other goals, right? The podcast and business goals, more business and then a little bit of podcast, right? So it kind of goes that way. But my main focus day in and day out is going to be health right now, because I know if I have more energy, I feel vibrant, I have all the stamina and endurance and everything, it'll be easier to hit the other goals. So I realized this was more of a foundational goal and I'm working on it. So that's my goal. But so many people will pick too many things. And I met entrepreneurs who will have multiple businesses and they're like struggling to stay afloat because they have all these things they're trying to juggle. So the best entrepreneurs I've talked to either have one business or consolidated to one business, and now there's just explosive growth, right? So one goal. Last but not least, waiting for motivation instead of building systems. This kind of builds upon goals, right? And I've kind of danced around this topic a little bit too through this episode, but I've set my vision for the year, what I want to hit per quarter, my one goal, and then my weekly, thing objectives to hit, and then daily tasks to get to hit the week and hit the quarter goals, right? So I've kind of structured it that way. If you're interested in hearing more about that, I could totally do an episode on it. But I really like this idea of gamification that I've like kind of stumbled upon over the last couple weeks, and this idea of gamifying your life, because big goals take time and delayed gratification can be difficult if you don't see any small wins. So I realized I really like this idea of creating metrics to find and see the small wins as they grow. I think that makes everything easier, right? So like a small example is I started calling these like small insignificant tasks that I have through the day, like side quests or main quests, which is like the daily things I need to hit. And I like reference my healthy habits as like HP, right? Like you got to work on your health because that's what gives you HP to keep going through the game. And XP experience is things that you develop through the quests, right? So like I've like created this small little gamification idea that I don't know, it just seems kind of fun for me. Um, and I think it would really help with like delayed gratification. But yeah, I hope you guys found some value out of this. I tried to keep it short. I don't know why, but I tend to, I guess, just talk too much. I don't know. But hopefully I get better at condensing this. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments and what you think about, the layout of this solo episodes. Should they be shorter, longer? I'm looking into making like lecture style videos with like my whiteboard. So like I'll have things to talk about, like goal setting and like I talked about recently. So like things like that. But the podcast stuff is a bit more face to face, just chatting. I like to keep it that way. I don't want to do like a lot of B-roll and make it more YouTube video like. I want to keep it like this. Um, yeah, I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. And if you watch till this point, I really appreciate it. Sharing or just interacting with these episodes, or me at least, would be so helpful, because your feedback is what helps me get better and give you what the people want, right? So don't be a stranger, say hi. Thanks guys, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. See ya.